going on, everybody? My name is Mason. I just wanted to make my first post about this. I have been trying to build one of the first $1 billion ideas from ChatGPT. That is not an exaggeration. I am literally trying to build a $1 billion company from the ground up right now. And I have wedged myself in the AI agent sphere and have been hitting the ground pretty fast here. I actually had a prompt in the chat GPT. I named it the $1 billion idea. I was just kind of going through the motions. I've always been extremely entrepreneurial my whole life. I have done a lot of different ventures, and different experiences. And right now I'm working for, a private equity firm and manage a team right now. And I also have been trying to pass prop firms on, for like trading, scalping and whatnot. And I just kind of got to thinking, I was thinking about Naval Ravikant and, basically what he says is work, right? And whether you're working on something not as difficult, work is work at the end of the day. So I just started exploring ideas with ChatGPT about like, hey, what does a $1 billion company look like? Why do these succeed? Why don't they succeed? What value do they bring? What problems are they trying to solve, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, here's who I am. Here's my skill set. Here's what I've accomplished. Here's where my pitfalls are. What makes the most sense for me to try to build a $1 billion company. And it basically told me all my flaws, that, I lack leverage, I lack capital, and I'm a high performer, but I need to be able to put myself in a position to use leverage and, basically build a team and, also build a co-founder if I'm doing something technical. So I told it, it's kept in a tract of all my likes and dislikes. And I was like, hey, I am the type of person that if I don't really love or enjoy what I'm doing, like I will eventually, find something else to do. I was a realtor for a number of years. And, as much as I liked the freedom and I appreciated the money I was making, it just wasn't me. I love building systems. I love, building the aspects of a business, but I was very transactional in the midst of it. And so I was talking with ChatGPT here. I was like, look, I'm a high performer, all these things, whatever. I was like, give me some ideas of what we can do here together. And essentially it was like, you can work on high ticket SaaS company. You can get into AI. You can do like a crypto trading mental boot camp type deal. And I was like, nah, none of this is really working. So then I started exploring some other ideas with it. And we kind of came to, I was like, let's focus on some of the problems. And I was like, is it healthcare? Like, where are the biggest problems in the world? And what, with my skill set, can I help out with? And it's like, well, your lack of skill set's really going to put you in certain boxes. Like, yes, you could go to healthcare, but like, you don't know anything about healthcare. So you're going to need someone in that aspect of things to help grow a company. And I kind of landed on in real estate, which is, what I know and what I've done before in the past, and learning how to automate and build AI infrastructure. So that's currently where I'm at right now. And I was like, okay, well, what's our wedge? What's the problem that we're dealing with? And how does this lead to a $1 billion company? And it also helped me understand too, like a $1 billion company, a lot of it is the assets. A lot of it is the ARR, the annual recurring revenue, the monthly recurring revenue, all that stuff. So generally, depending on the type of industry you're in, there's obviously multiple factors that you can do on top of the top line revenue you're making, which makes a $1 billion company, all this other bullshit. So as I was going through these ideas, I was like, you know what? Like, I am an efficiency freak. Like, that's just who I am in nature. Like, I hate wasting time. I always want to find things to do things quicker, do things faster, my pace. Like, I have to listen to YouTube on 0.15. Like, 1x is just too slow for me. Sometimes, depending on how fast they're talking, I can listen to 2x and still retain most of the information. So that's just more a little bit about me. I like to do stuff efficiently. Like, I hate wasting time to my core. Like, I hate it. I even walk a certain way and hit corners quicker, so that way I'm not wasting time throughout the day. Like, I absolutely just despise it. So I was like, okay, let me lean into that a little bit. Something that I feel like, okay, this is naturally just a part of who I am as a person and can blend in with the problem and or solution that we're providing to the marketplace. So within the AI sphere, within the efficiency with, saving people time, saving people money, we kind of landed on an AI voice agent, that would allow people to make outbound calls, inbound calls, and, basically operate as a salesperson. And what I've learned so far is that AI is not 100% there yet to where it can close a deal like as a realtor could. It's not going to be like an AE, like an executive, account executive that is closing a deal with a regular human. The script load is not that robust at the moment, but is more than capable of handling like what an SDR does, or handling like a junior acquisition rep, or handling what a receptionist does. They can slightly qualify leads and pass them on to a human or a closer or whatever within your organization. So then I started doing some research on that aspect, right? That was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was doing research on that in the sense of, well, AI voice agents are starting to be more prominent, and what does that look like in the marketplace right now? And it looks like product market fit has been circulating. There are a lot of companies online that are advocating for an AI voice agent, but they're all casting like a wide net, right? They're doing healthcare, dentistry, clerksmanships, real estate, insurance, mortgage, everything. They're trying to do everything under the sun. And I was like, I feel like I've understood the startup community very well and understand what separates some businesses from others. And I was like, you know what? I think what I'm going to do is stick to the niche, right? There's riches and niches type deal. And what do I know? And what problems do I see right now? And what problems that I can talk intimately about. So as I was going through this discovery of, where do these problems really lie, I do realize like, hey, the AI voice agent would work very well for companies or industries that are having an influx of a lot of outbound leads or inbound leads or whatever the case might be. So I dug a little bit deeper. Yes, there are CRMs out there right now that provide a free inbound lead. And what I started to realize, a lot of these companies only do inbound. And I was like, well, maybe outbound can be my shtick, or why aren't they doing outbound? That was also part of the research that I was conducting, to figure out why these things weren't done. And a lot of it came to the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Agency, as to why there are not outbound calls being done by some of these voice agents. And a lot of it is you have to have certain compliance. And if someone does not opt in to be talked to by a certain agent or a certain artificial voice or whatever the case might be, excuse me. Yeah, if they don't opt in for some of this stuff, then you can't be called, right? Like you can't just cold call with an AI. Actually, there's a pretty hefty penalty by the TCPA for every time a call is being done. So I was going through this. I was okay, well, maybe that's what people are working towards. And there are a few companies that are starting to test the waters with outbound calling. A lot of them do not, though. A lot of them see that as a risky play, as a legal play, because how are you going to keep and maintain compliance amongst all the businesses that you're onboarding and make sure that they follow the guidelines? Because ultimately, if they do not follow the guidelines, you can be held responsible if your technology is the one making the call. So I was like, okay, so there has to be pretty serious checks and balances. There has to be a pretty airtight contract between the people that sign up for your service or whatever the case might be, to where if they do nefarious activities or stuff that are outbound, within the constraints that we've talked about, that liability comes back to them and not us, right? And even then, everything is negotiable. It can be done in court. So I was like, okay, I understand their point of view from this point. But then as I started, going back to the problem and the solution, if there is one, and also that makes sense for me and my skill set, I was okay. Real estate is definitely where my jam is. I understand the problem. And, the private equity firm that I work with also does real estate as well. I understand that there's an influx of calls that are done. There are leads that are submitted on websites, on forums, on certain platforms that are then transferred over to someone's CRM, et cetera, et cetera. So I found my shtick, okay? And I was like, hey, ChatGPT, I was like, hey, found my shtick, understand the problem very intimately. Is a problem that my team has right now that, leads aren't followed up with in a certain amount of time. Leads are not followed up with within 5 minutes like they're supposed to be. Some leads only get contacted once. Some of these monotonous things that a business owner looks at and says, hey, like these are the tangible problems that we may not quantify specifically, but definitely can account for a lot of lost revenue, money being spent on leads, et cetera, right? So I was talking with ChatGPT here, and I was like, hey, what are the constraints here at this point? I'm not tech. Like, I don't have any tech background. What can I do here, and what can I do to get a co-founder or CTO, Chief Technical Officer? And I've already been on Y Combinator before in the past for a different idea I had a couple years ago. And they're like, hey, if that's what stick with that lane. Like, it is pretty, not infamous, but it's pretty famous actually for, bringing people together and launching big things in the space. So I got on there, and I had about 100, cleaned up my profile. I had about 800 different leads of what I was looking for in a CTO. And I was like, hey, what are the odds that I can build this thing if it's just me? They're like, very low, very, very low, unless you start putting your own money. I was like, okay, well, what are the odds that this succeeds to get in my first customer if I do have a CTO? They're like, decently you have a fighting chance, at least. And so I started getting on Y Combinator, and within the first week, I locked in with someone. His name's Alex. He was actually working on an AI voice agent just like this, in a sense, for a company out of Cyprus, the country, and they were not going to bring the product to the US. And he's like, okay, well, if that's what you guys are doing, I'm out, type of deal. Like, if that's not the plan, then I'm out. I want to be here for the long term, et cetera, et cetera. So as I messaged him, I was like, hey man, this is what I'm looking for. And then he messaged me back that info and that he really wanted to talk to me, and get to know me more about the idea. And, we had our first calls, and I was like, hey, this is what I want to do. Here's what the minimum viable product looks like. I want to get this thing up and running, and right now my job is to, validify or validate the problem and see if people are going to be willing to pay for it. So started doing that, and that was probably 2 weeks ago. So that's where I'm at right now. Do have a CTO. We do have a website up and running right now that we're kind of just testing out with some of our clients. We do have 2 wedges that, I've been personally pushing at this moment, outside of work, of course. And what I do specifically is I'm starting to talk to more brokerages, because I obviously was with a brokerage for a number of years and worked with a team. Brian, my guy, worked with him for a few years throughout my whole real estate career or realtor career. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at, man. We're about to be right there with the minimum viable product. I spoke with Brian actually, and he was like, look, man, the integrations are going to be everything, but I do feel like this is a problem that I have, right? That the brokerage has, that other realtors I know have this issue. And if I can save myself time, absolutely. Like, people pay for ISAs, inside sales agents, all the time. They pay for Conversion Monster, which is like $700. And respectfully, a lot of people that work for them don't sound like they're in the US. They don't follow up when they're supposed to. They don't do X, Y, and Z. And if you can curve that and you can automate this, like that's where the gold is. And of course, that was my idea anyways. Brian was just kind of reiterating to me that, like, he understands the problem, he understands the solution that provided, and he's on board. So he's been, we're actually going to meet this Saturday, and we're going to go out and do a call logic script for him specifically, because he's kind of going to be our test guinea pig here. And I'm not trying to give away too much information in the sense of, like, what CRM we're trying to work with and what companies we're targeting and whatnot. But, we are going to create a call logic so that way when, a lead comes in from Zillow or Realtor.com, we can talk to them specifically, or for realtors, for wherever their lead source is at. And yeah, that's where we're at, man. So that's just, this is my first video to put out into the world and say, like, this is going to be fucking done regardless, in one way or another, whether I got to pivot, whether, Alex and I can build this or not. Like, this idea, I really kind of conceptualized end of March, like 28th or 29th or 30th. And 2.5 weeks down the road, I have a CTO. I do feel like I have an ICP, an ideal customer. I forgot what that abbreviation is, like my avatar. I do need to do more validation or validity. I'm coming up with all types of words today. I do need to do more validation on the problem, and if people are willing to pay for it, hopefully sign a big brokerage, and do others as well, do big teams. So that's the plan right now, guys. I'm super excited. Hopefully within this next week, I'll start testing out with Brian as far as his leads. We're going to test it out with us first, of course, and make sure the script is airtight. The product itself is also very important. One of the things that we realized with the website, and you can get in the chat and talk to Alex here. That's what the bot's name is right now, or you can change it to a female, whatever the case might be. But essentially, there are some lags, and we've been using 11 Labs and all this other voice AI agent stuff. But essentially, it does sound pretty human. It definitely sounds, for lack of a better word, it sounds American, which is what a lot of people look for, believe it or not. Obviously, people are, one of the biggest concerns that I had was from some of these people that I've passed on to listen to the video of me talking to Alex was like, hey man, I can tell this is AI, this is that and the third. Are you sure people are going to be okay with talking AI? It's like, well, respectfully, man, they're okay with talking with people with thick accents outside of the country. So I really don't think this is going to be that big of a deal. Once again, they use plenty of ISA companies like this beforehand. So I don't really think that's going to be a huge problem. But of course, you got to listen to what the market tells you. So you guys stay tuned in. I'll probably have an update in a week from now about where we're at. Hopefully, we'll be testing actual leads and see how those conversations go after I meet with Brian this Saturday. And we go over a whole call logic, yeah. And then we're going to do some drip campaigns inside of his CRM. So that way we can actually start calling out some of these leads and see how these conversations conversions go. Stay tuned for more, guys. Thanks.